Find it right after Romans, Gospel of John, Romans. You'll find it right after the book of John. I don't know what Bible I'm reading from. It's John, then Acts. Acts chapter 19. And then Romans is after Acts. Is that right? Yeah. I think that's right. It's bad when you start getting old. I can't get out of the house most of the time. Janine and I had to go up to the Social Security office this week and do some stuff. And I drove us up there, and I left the house. I did not have my wallet or my keys in my pocket. I drove all the way to Withville, no wallet, no keys. If I'd have got pulled over, probably would have got in big trouble. And I don't know if I shared this with you or not. A few weeks ago, I was in Roanoke taking my mother out to lunch. She was down there with my sister, and we went to K&W there in Roanoke by the airport, which is short for Canes and Walkers, by the way, which you probably knew. But anyway, we went to K&W, and I paid for lunch, and then just took her around. We made a couple of stops, and then after I dropped her off, I went on into Roanoke, had to do a couple more things, and somewhere during the day out with her, I lost my wallet. I don't know if it just fell out of my pocket or whatever, but I lost it, and we have not found it. I've had to go to the DMV and all the banks and get canceled cards and get new cards. Had to go to a Social Security office, get a new Social Security card. So I say all that, so I hope that you will pray for me, right? Because I'm like, I don't know. My brain is getting overloaded sometimes. Acts chapter 19. There's a story here. We'll start about verse number 23. Verse number 23. There's a story here that we'll just highlight. We'll go down and I'll pick out some verses, and I think we can relate it to what's happening as the Los Angeles riots. Are you keeping up? You're watching that on the news, the Los Angeles riots that seem to be getting and escalating every day, more and more. The National Guard was called in, and then 700 Marines were sent in. So that's when it gets to that scale, that's pretty serious. But there's a riot in Ephesus here in Acts 19. There's a riot that's going on here, and that Los Angeles riot, well, it's one thing to peacefully protest, and a completely another thing entirely to have a violent riot, just a demonstration of lawlessness and criminal activity. There's a big difference. To protest is a constitutional right to gather and peacefully protest, but you do not have the right for vandalism and looting and doing creating harm for others. Those criminal acts are not a constitutional right. But there's something in here from Ephesus that happened in Ephesus that kind of put me in mind of the LA riot. And I think we can learn a few lessons from this riot in Ephesus. So if you've got Acts 19, which is after the book of John, look at verse number 23. I'll start there, read just a couple of verses, and then we'll kind of set the stage here. Acts 19 and verse 23. Now Paul has been in Ephesus. He's been preaching the Lord Jesus Christ, Savior. Ephesus is a pagan city at this point. They worship many gods. One of those gods is the great goddess Diana. They worship her. They build shrines and statues and all this kind of thing. So Paul is there preaching Jesus, And we'll pick it up at verse 23. And the same time there arose no small stir about that way. For a certain man, verse 24, for a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, which made silver shrines for Diana, brought no small gain unto the craftsmen. Okay, so number one, this riot, when there is a riot, most always, you can't say, every time, but most always, number one, there is an instigator. There is somebody behind it. There is somebody that has stirred it up. There's somebody that that's behind it. Now, Demetrius here, he's a silversmith. He makes silver shrines for the goddess Diana. In Ephesus, no doubt, he is a business leader in that city. He is a man of wealth. He's a man of influence. He's a man of power, prestige. The silversmith who is making silver shrines for the goddess Diana. Okay, and so in verse 24, we meet him. Okay, we come down to verse number 25, and Demetrius is upset and angered about Paul preaching that there is no gods made with hands. And the reason he's upset about that is it's cutting into his wealth. Okay, so if you look in verse 25, Demetrius gathers a crowd. Okay, look at it in verse 25. Okay, so we meet Demetrius, the silversmith, and when it says brought no small gain, it brought a lot of gain, a lot of money to the craftsmen. Verse 25, whom he called together with the workmen of like occupation. So he gets all the silversmiths, all the whatever person that had a similar occupation to his, all the craftsmen that were like him, all the silversmiths, coppersmiths, I don't know. He pulled all of them together, whom he called together with the workmen of like occupation. He said, sirs, you know that by this craft we have our wealth. So Demetrius here, he pulls all these guys together and he proceeds to incite them, to get them stirred up and to get them angered and they're easily influenced. These other craftsmen are easily influenced by Demetrius and they follow his lead. He's the one that organizes all this. Now, in a riot, it's not just a bunch of people that all of a sudden just happen to come out. There's organization to it. You understand that? There's somebody behind it. There's an instigator. There is, and it's planned. It has organization. So here, this instigator, Demetrius, he gathers him a crowd of other craftsmen, and he incites this group, and they follow him. Now we come down here in verse 25. Also, he says something very important here. In verse 25, you know. Now, you ever heard somebody say, now you know that, now you know that ain't right. Now you know that he's this, you know that she's that. But anytime you hear somebody like that who's instigating, who's stirring up some controversy, now you know what I'm talking about. Now it's a kind of a persuasive thing. And he tells them, by this craft, we have our wealth. We have our wealth. So it's about money. It's about money. It's about religion. It's about power. So we see it here in verse 25. By this craft, we have our wealth. So money is behind it. Paul is preaching that there is no other. Paul is preaching there's no God made with hands. And their occupation and their wealth is coming in large part from these shrines that they make to Diana. And Paul's preaching is a threat to their wealth. Look at it in verse 26. Moreover, now we have this wealth, by this craft we have our wealth. In verse 26, moreover, you see and hear that not alone at Ephesus, but almost throughout all Asia, this Paul has persuaded and turned away much people, saying that they be no gods which are made with hands. And Paul is absolutely right. He's preaching truth here. And these guys are, he's turning people away, and it's affecting their sales, okay, of these shrines, these silver shrines that they make to Diana. So he's blaming Paul here. This Paul, notice it says, this Paul, this guy has persuaded and turned away much people. There's no gods which are made with hands. And he says, our income is in danger in verse 27. So that not only this, our craft is in danger. Now, I want to stop right there for a second. Here is Demetrius. He's gathered this crowd of craftsmen. He's laying out his case. He's telling them that Paul is hurting their income and that our craft is in danger to be set at naught, but also that the temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. Well, not all the world worships Diana there. And he says, our craft is in danger. Now, as a silversmith, I have to imagine that he had some other jobs besides the shrines to Diana. He had some other projects that they had. There was some other business for him besides just the shrine making. So he's exaggerating things. He is stretching the truth. He's saying that all of Asia and the world worships Diana. Okay, so he's exaggerating. It's hyperbole. He's making claims that really aren't totally accurate on that end of it. But the money, the craft, not only the craft is in danger. Now, if he can't appeal to their greed, notice this, if he can't appeal to their greed, he's going to appeal to their worship. We worship Diana, the magnificence of Diana. And he's saying there is no God. So not only is he taking money out of our pocket, he is hindering our worship of Diana. Our craft's in danger. But what stands out to me, and that is this: the concern over money is first. The concern over money came first, then the devotion to worship the great goddess Diana. The main concern, the primary concern, he places the money, the wealth, okay? I mean, if he really was this dedicated and devoted to the worship of Diana, he probably would have been offended over that more than the loss of his money. But it's about money. Okay, so the rioting is about money. Okay, this LA riot, who's the instigator? Who's the one behind it? Are they paid? Are they paid rioters, which we think they probably are? Who's behind that? Who's the instigator of that? Who has gathered a crowd and incited this crowd? Who are they following? What's it really about? Is it about power? Is it really the concern for the immigrants that is driving this? Are you trying to tell me that we're so concerned about the situation and the condition of the immigrants that's why we're protesting? No, there's ulterior motives. And here, this riot in Ephesus that's getting ready to burst here it's about money, it's about religion, it's about power. Notice in verse 28. Notice in verse 28. Look at verse 28 here. So Demetrius, he's just spewing his venom, okay, and his falsehoods. Verse 28. And when they, the craftsmen that he's gathered, when they heard these sayings, when they heard what Demetrius had to say, they were full of wrath, and cried out, saying, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." When they heard the rhetoric of Demetrius, when they heard his venom, when they heard his wrath and his, they weren't full of wrath from Paul's preaching. They were full of wrath after they listened to Demetrius. Okay? It wasn't Paul's preaching about there's no gods made with hands. They heard that. That didn't create the uproar. It was Demetrius inciting a riot. It was him stirring. There's always some influential, some charismatic personality, somebody that has some persuasion, power of persuasion. So now he's incited the riot here in verse 28. They're full of wrath. Now that's just the craftsmen, okay? That's all the guys that are making their living, making these shrines and these statues and what have you to Diana. These are the craftsmen. Now watch what happens in verse 29. Verse 29. And the whole city was filled with confusion. The whole city. Now this started with one man, Demetrius. He gets in the crowd of the other craftsmen, and now the whole city. And confusion here is not uncertainty about a fact. It's not that they aren't sure about something. The confusion, the whole city's in confusion. It's an uproar. It's an uprising. It's a riot. It's what it is. The whole city, not just the craftsmen. The city's filled with confusion. Verse 29 there. The whole city. Okay, so there's an uproar. And it's escalating. Can you see this? Demetrius, the craftsmen, and now the whole city's in chaos and in an uproar. Just because Paul said there's no gods made with hands, and they aren't selling as much as they were. So when they heard that, they're full of wrath from Demetrius. The whole city now. Let's look on at verse 29. The whole city was filled with confusion, having caught Gaius and Aristarchus, men of Macedonia, Paul's companions in travel. They rushed with one accord into the theater. Now they, by force and by violence, they have caught Paul's companions, and they pulled them in to the theater here. It says. So now it's escalated into violent activity. Okay, these people in Ephesus, they're acting out in their rage and in their wrath, being stirred up by Demetrius. Now a riot has broke out. Drop down to verse 32. Verse 32. This is interesting here. Verse 32. Some therefore, okay, so they pulled Paul's two companions into the theater there, and it's getting ugly, it's getting violent. Verse 32. Some therefore cried one thing, and some another. For the assembly was confused, and the more part knew not wherefore they came together. They didn't even know what was going on. They were there joining in the riot. They were there joining in this chaos and this mayhem, and they didn't even know the reason. They're just participating in it. The more part, most of them, most of the people, they didn't even know. The whole city is just enraged now, and there's riots, and they pulled these two companions, and the people that are participating in this, the most of them did not know anything about it. Didn't even know the facts. Didn't even know. They didn't. And isn't that? Don't we see that? Don't we see that in this LA riot? People that are just out there to steal, to loot, to just to somehow get I don't know, and to be part of anarchy or to be part of violence and looting. They didn't understand the issue. They didn't have the facts. Look at verse 34. Now they're talking about Alexander. Alexander is a Jew, and he's trying to calm things down. In verse 33, you come down to verse 34. But they knew that he was a Jew, Alexander, all with one voice about the space of 2 hours, cried out, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." So here's a man, he's a Jew, he's trying to calm things down a little bit. And for 2 hours, 2 hours, it says the whole city, for 2 hours, they're crying out, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians. Great is Diana of the Ephesians." In verse 34. Come down to verse 35. Now, here, here's where we got to think about this carefully. Somebody has to bring order to this situation. It's out of hand. It's escalated. It's somebody has to bring order into this and de-escalate this thing, if you will. Look at verse 35. And when the town clerk had appeased the people, he said, "Ye men of Ephesus, what man is there that knoweth not how that the city of the Ephesians is a worshiper of the great goddess Diana and of the image which fell down from Jupiter?" Look at verse 36. "Seeing then that these things cannot be spoken against, ye ought to be quiet and to do nothing rashly." He's calming them down here. He's bringing some order to this thing. He's getting control. He's getting some control. Verse 37. "For ye have brought hither these men," the two that we just looked at, there, Gaius and Aristarchus. "You have brought hither these men, which are neither robbers of churches, nor yet blasphemers of your goddess." You brought them. They're innocent. They haven't done anything. They haven't committed any crime. Verse 38. Now watch this. "Wherefore," now let's go back to where it all started. Let's go back to the instigator. Let's go back to the guy that's behind all this. Verse 38. "Wherefore, if Demetrius and the craftsmen which are with him, if they have a matter against any man, the law is open, and there are deputies. Let them implead one another. But if ye inquire anything concerning other matters, it shall be determined in a lawful assembly." So what I want you to see right here, someone had to bring order, okay? Someone had to have some rational thinking, the town's clerk here. Someone had to have some common sense. There was no justifiable reason for this riot. And the men that they pulled in have committed no crimes. Now, the town's clerk is bringing some order to this thing. And there's a right way to handle things. There's a right way to handle things. Verse 38 there, the town's clerk is telling the whole city here, this whole mob, "Wherefore, if Demetrius and the craftsmen that are with him, the people that are involved, okay? If Demetrius and the craftsmen have a matter, the law is there. There's deputies, let them talk to them. And if you inquire anything concerning other matters, it shall be determined in a lawful assembly, not by violence and rioting and aggression. And look at verse 40. For we are in danger to be called in question for this day's uproar. It was an uproar. There being no cause whereby we may give an account of this concourse, of these actions. And when he had thus spoken, he dismissed the assembly. So someone had to bring order. The town's clerk, someone had to have some common sense, some rational thinking, had to bring some control to this situation. And there's a right way to handle it. And he tells them that there's law, there's legal steps. There's legal steps. There's a right way to go about it. There is a system of justice, and there are proper authorities. If you have any matter outside of this, handle it right. You don't create an uproar in the city. You don't create a mass confusion and create hostility and resort to taking the law into your own hands and even criminal activity. That's not the way things get done. He tells them in verse 38 through 41 that if you have a matter, it should be settled in a lawful assembly. And then last in verse 40, we see this. There is an accountability for that uproar. There's to have some rational common sense. And there's a right way for the people that have issues to make their voice heard. Okay? There's a right way. There's a legal process. There is a system of justice. There are proper authorities. And then finally I think the lesson is for those that are involved in that, they should be arrested. They should be held accountable. They should, there's no justifiable reason here, this town clerk says. So the best thing to do is for y'all just to go on home. And he dismissed the assembly. And he brought some control to the situation and dispersed it, de-escalated it, okay? So in this riot at Ephesus, not totally different than the riot we see in LA. So where does that leave you and I? What's that? A big piece of baloney, bless God. Glad I'm not a Los Angeles resident. I'm just glad. Thank God. Give me Wyatt's country store and a fried bologna sandwich any day. But pray for peace. Pray for peace. But the whole city, one man enraged a whole city. And man, it was getting, who? So I'm glad that we have, now you may not agree with this thought or not, but I'm glad that there are measures being taken to get this situation under control. If you are a business owner in Los Angeles and your business has been busted into and looted, and I mean, there's only so much of that you can stand before you just have to say, I'm out. I'm out. A hidden agenda. Absolutely. There's an ulterior motive. There's a hidden agenda to it. Absolutely. But if there is no if there's no authority or no law or no one to get a handle on this situation, it goes from one person to a group to a whole city. Then, it just, who knows, where does it stop? I mean, is Christiansburg, is it totally unheard of that something that could happen in Christiansburg? No, it's not. It's not unheard of. So the day that we're living in, this rioting, okay, this looting, this violence, and the police in Los Angeles what were they doing? Where were they? What's that? Getting their vehicles burned? It's a dangerous time that we're living in, where it leaves us.
Where you got a governor and officials that they don't want to stop.
No.
But then they expect the American people to pay to rebuild it. If they start shooting them something out there with that throw a brick, put them on the ground, that would stop. That basically kill a bunch of them. So it makes it escalate more and more.
Makes it escalate more and more. But they know that there are no consequences, okay, for their actions. And if they get arrested, somebody said, if you get arrested, I'll bail you out. I'll pay your bail. You'll be right back out. There's no consequences, okay? You can, what's the dollar amount you can steal? You can steal this much and not be arrested? What is that?
That's just like the guy salesman in Lowe's the other day. He said there's two guys come in, picked up all kinds of power tools stuff, and didn't even slow down and went right out the door. And I said, well, what? Y'all didn't stop it? He said, we're told not to.
Okay.
They got to steal. They see them and they come back and go out again and come back. They got to get so much money of tools and stuff that they steal before they can take them for them. I said, no wonder the prices are going up.
It's a sign of the times, really. It's a sign of the times. We're, think about the condition this world will be in after the rapture. It's going to make what's going on in Los Angeles look like a Sunday school picnic. Father, we thank you for this time together. We ask you to bless us and keep us safe. Help us to pray for our leaders and our country. Help us to pray, Lord, for the lost, that we can get them the gospel and see them saved before it's too late. We're looking forward to going home to be with you. We see the world just seemingly coming apart.